I do get to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Sunil Joshi from the City of Jacksonville, and he's the health officer with the City of Jacksonville. Will be sharing a few remarks with us today.
Thank you, guys, and congratulations for everything the North Florida Clean Fuels Coalition has done. The numbers are truly remarkable to see what has happened over time, and I'll share some of that data here. But the question, of course, is and do I get to move the slides? Or yes. Okay, so I hit this button right there. Yes, so there's Chef, okay, and there I am, okay, great. And so the question, of course, is does air pollution affect health, and in particular transportation-associated air pollution and health? And that's what I'm going to talk the most about here, but we will also talk a little bit about the data and how it looks now compared to how it looked maybe 15 years ago here in Northeast Florida. Okay, so air pollution in general is definitely an environmental health hazard. So it's not good for a lot of reasons, but in particular for our health, that's probably the main issue. So it's a major threat, not just to us here in the United States, but globally, and in particular some of the Asian countries out there as well. Responsible for over 6 to 7 million deaths throughout the world each year. But what is transportation-related air pollution? And so, I don't know, can you guys hear me if I'm not talking around the mic? Can you hear me back there? Okay, yeah. Because it's easier for me to move around and look at this. What's that? Oh, I can, right, that one or this one? Okay. All right, so what is transportation-related air pollution? So it's a mixture of gases and particles that are typically released from fossil fuels, okay? So this is that human-made air pollution that we have, not just from cars, but also from industrial plants and things like that, but in particular from transportation, ground-level ozone. So the ozone that's bad for us, the one that's at the ground level, carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxide, sulfur oxides, all of those things that can affect health, but also decrease air quality and even make ozone itself. Volatile organic compounds, and then the things we worry the most about that get into our lungs are the particulate matters, those less than 10 microns and those that are less than 2.5 micrometers. Okay, so what is ozone? So ozone is an atmospheric gas. It becomes a problem when it's at the lower levels, the levels where we're breathing. So when all of these pollutants kind of come together, these are pollutants that can come together from cars, power plants, paper mills, all of the things that can lead to air pollution, and they come together and react with sunlight to form ozone. Noxious gases include the carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide gases, nitrogen gases, sulfur gases, and then all of these, of course, are components of motor vehicle emissions. The volatile organic compounds are volatile in the sense that they do vaporize at room temperature, okay? And they're organic because they do contain carbon products as well. And these are things we see in gasoline, okay? And gasoline is a major source of volatile organic compounds. And then the particulate matter, which can be really, really fine matter at 10 microns or less, and then some that are 2.5 microns or less, which are the ones that really do affect our respiratory tract. And this is a great slide. I love this slide because it actually shows you an idea of how small these particles are. So this is basically a shaft of hair, okay? So pluck a piece of hair out of your scalp, and that's how small that piece is there. And you can look here at fine beach sands. When you go to the sand, go to the beach, and you've got sand in your car, you get one of those little grains, that's 90 microns, okay? A piece of hair is about 50 microns in terms of its diameter. The PM10, which are 10 microns, are things that are the sizes of these little blue balls here that make up about 5 of them make up one shaft of hair, okay? That's what you see in dust and pollen and on mold and all these things that people, I'm an allergist by the way, so all these things that people come to my office for are related to those types of things. But you take 1/4 of that size, 2.5 microns, which means that you can put 4 of those little microns on one of the 10 micron particulate matters. Those are the ones that we worry the most about. These are what you see in the combustion particles, the organic compounds with carbon, metals that get airborne, can't see them with the naked eye, but can affect our air quality. So, Does transportation-associated pollution lead to health problems? And it absolutely does. There are many, many studies, and we can actually do an entire symposium just on this, okay? And there are symposiums on this throughout the country, but I'm gonna just kind of summarize a few things. So cancer, yes, a large study of over 57,000 women found living near major roadways, I-95, I-10, I-295, may increase your risk of breast cancer. Chemicals in gasolines increase the risk of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, heart disease. So fine particulate matter, that matter that's 2.5 microns or less, or 10 microns or less, can impair blood vessel function and speed up calcification in the arteries. So calcification in the arteries is what happens when you have coronary artery disease or get a heart attack or a stroke when you have calcification in your carotid arteries. So as you're speeding that up, your risk of sudden cardiac death will go up. Link between short-term daily exposures by postmenopausal women to nitrogen oxides, which are in the air from gasoline, increase the risk of hemorrhagic stroke, meaning getting a stroke, but also bleeding in your brain as well. Exposure to transportation-associated pollution also reduces HDL cholesterol. Remember, HDL cholesterol is the good cholesterol. That's the cholesterol that you want to have elevated. So in these cases, HDL goes down, your risk of heart disease or stroke starts to increase as a result of that. TRAP also increases a pregnant woman's risk for changes in blood pressure, in particular hypertension. So hypertensive disorders in the third trimester of pregnancy can be associated with premature delivery, preterm labor, something called preeclampsia, which can affect a mom after delivery and in her next pregnancy as well, and may be a cause of fetal death in our infant mortality numbers here in Northeast Florida as well. Respiratory illnesses, this is what I do for a living, and we could talk about this for hours too, but there is no doubt that air pollution, ozone, particulate matter, 2.5 microns or less, or even 10 microns or less, can affect asthma and airway-related inflammation, in particular in children. There is data here in Northeast Florida where we have increased asthma exacerbation rates in our most underserved communities, which tend to be in the areas where we have more diesel exhaust streams. Okay. Increases in asthma prevalence and severity are linked to urbanization. Again, so that's basically what I'm talking about, where the outdoor particulate matter levels of 2.5 microns are higher in these communities. And children living in those low-income areas tend to do worse with asthma. Can be associated with chronic bronchitis as well. Pregnancy, we already talked about a little bit of data with pregnancy, but pregnancy, prenatal exposure to particulate matter at 2.5 microns or less can be associated with low birth weight in the infant. Low birth weight is associated with increased risk of infant mortality as well. Women exposed to high levels of that PM less than 2.5 during pregnancy are 2 times more likely to have a child with autism as well. The reason for that is unclear. Whether that is a true cause and effect or just a correlation is unclear as well. Second and third trimester exposure to those low particulate matters increase that risk of the child, him or herself, having high blood pressure early in life. So the EPA tracks emissions data, and there's a lot of other health-related issues we can talk about, but I do want to go through some data here and give you some good news too. So the EPA does track emissions data, looking at carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, PM10, PM2.5, sulfur particles, and then the VOCs as well. And here, the city of Jacksonville, the Environmental Quality Division has 8 different ambient air devices throughout the community that monitor ozone levels, nitric gases, sulfur gases, carbon gases, and then the PM2.5 as well. And this data is let's go back first. Okay, this data is uploaded every day to the EPA. And so you can see here's Duval County, and you can see the little yellow thumbtacks are where we have our monitoring stations throughout the county here. So pretty diverse throughout the community. The on-road, the data I'm going to show you, this on-road emissions data is from 2008 to 2020, and it is based on the National Emissions Inventory data. They update it every 3 years, so we should be getting updated numbers for 2023 soon, hopefully. And so we'll go through some of the on-road transportation-related emissions data for Jacksonville. So you can see from 2008 to 2020, this looks at all of the different criteria pollutants in one graph here, you can see there's a trend in the right direction. We're seeing significant decreases in total emissions in tonnage here. And this is looking at all of them together, and I'll look at them separately here in a second as well. This here looks at greenhouse gas. Okay, so the greenhouse gases have also shifted down, not nearly as much as the criteria pollutants have, but you do see that shift downward in greenhouse gases as well. But here's the more individual data for criteria pollutants. So carbon monoxide, which we all know can be deadly if you inhale large amounts of it. This comes from incomplete combustion of fuel and makes up the bulk of this on-road pollutant emissions. You can see we have had a significant decrease in carbon monoxide release from 2008 to 2020. This is about a 70% decrease in emissions. Nitrogen dioxide, even a greater decrease in emissions from 2008 all the way down to 2020. Significant improvements. Again, having alternative fuel sources does make a difference. Fine particulate matter, the one that we're talking about, the 2.5 or less, that can be associated with all those respiratory illnesses, that increases your risk of heart disease, increases your risk of cancer, increases your risk of preterm labor for women and preeclampsia. Also significantly decreased. I mean, 905 tons in 2008 to 209 in 2020, and hopefully in 2023 we'll see those numbers continue in that direction. The VOCs, volatile organic compounds, also all decreasing over time, and this is close to an 80% decrease in VOCs during the same time period. Okay, thank you. We only have 10 minutes, so that's all.
Questions, Sunil? Anyone?
Questions?
Doug?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the great info. How does humidity, which have spikes here, obviously, especially in the summer months, impact your data? Does that enhance trap, or does it mask trap, or and has the changing post-COVID changing work environments where people are traveling less because you get some opportunities to work at home? Has that created enhanced?
And that certainly may have impacted that 2020 data, right? Because of course they're averaging data between 3 years, so even 2023 you might see some of that impact. But the trend before that was also going in the right direction. But people staying at home, working from home probably did impact that some. The humidity is an issue. It's almost like, you know, when you live in a valley, right, things get stuck in there. When you have a humid environment, these particle matters stay in the air, which is why our pollen season tends to be longer, and people complain about pollen even into the summertime. When we have winds come through, cold fronts come through, things that push the air out of the region, that helps quite a bit. So yes, the humidity does play a role. Yes?
How do you communicate your mobile source emission concerns to the various transportation agencies, the state, environmental agencies in the state, and regionally?
How do you do what? I'm sorry, I don't
How do you
understand.
communicate your concerns?
Oh, from a city of Jacksonville perspective,
Yeah.
how do we communicate? Basically through programs like this, you know, using our Environmental Protection Board to get information out. We share our data with the National EPA as well. We actually do pretty well here in Jacksonville for the most part, so we're not nearly as concerned as some of the other communities throughout the country would be. But of course, if we were to need to communicate that, we would use our communications team and get that information out there. Yes?
Yes, thank you for the information, and I'm wondering, during this time, these years that you've shared, Jacksonville population has increased, and most likely industry has increased in the area. So what do you attribute to the decline in these foods?
Well, I mean, there may be a lot of reasons, and you can see some of the data that they presented to you there. You know, we lead the country in alternative fuel sources here in Northeast Florida. Our port has changed quite a bit over time using LPN type technology. And of course, we've lost a few paper mills along the way too. That also helps our air quality. We have a very clean industry here in Northeast Florida. So think about what are the major industries. Healthcare here. 1 in every 8 people work in healthcare in Duval County. The IT technology, information technology, which has driven a lot of the business to Jacksonville. It's a very clean industry as well, and so is the banking industry. So the industries that are coming into Jacksonville over the last 15 to 20 years tend to be relatively clean. And if we get more fleets to use alternative fuel sources, we'll continue to see those numbers drop.